This episode, we're going to continue and probably conclude our trips on Japan episodes. We've already done two before. I know people are thinking, damn, how can you keep milking this topic about going to Japan? Now, I will say for the record, the first two episodes we had, these were two guys that went to Japan, on a trip for about 2 weeks. And, I really loved having Kimono Joe and Habib on. They had some great insights and all that. But this time, for the finale, we got something a little bit different for you. I'm going to be speaking to a YouTuber, someone who's been blogging on YouTube since 2008, the early days of YouTube when nobody was on. Someone I met at the recent LondonSpill.com party, someone who's got a shitload of videos on YouTube about living in Japan. And without further ado, I want to introduce CAFFINEJedi. Welcome to Damn Right Everything Anime Manga.
Hello, everybody.
Oh, man, so glad to have you on, man. I appreciate you taking the time on to share your experiences.
Well, I'm glad that you invited me. I am very much looking forward to it.
Now, as I just alluded to, you didn't just visit Japan, you actually lived in Japan.
Yes, I did. I used to live there for 3 years.
Wow. And you got some stories, man. You got some insights that I found very interesting. I mean, in preparation for this podcast, I actually went and watched all your videos. I don't know how much you got. You got like 100 videos on you going to Japan. I felt kind of weird watching a video about a Caucasian woman living in Japan, but it was for the podcast, people. It wasn't my own thing. But obviously, I did get a lot of insight, and it was very interesting. And one thing I have to say, I really like your just frank, blatant, honest style of just telling it how it is from your perspective.
I just think that, especially when you live in Japan, a lot of your the conceptions you have about Japan are just blown out of the water, I would say, within the first 3 months.
Well, yeah, we're definitely going to get into that. But obviously, because this is an anime manga podcast, I will be asking you some anime and manga-centric questions relating to that, otaku culture in Japan. You live in there for 3 years. You definitely must have seen some things in the culture that's got a lot to do with anime and manga. So, but I also want to say, more recently, although this is mostly about your trip to Japan, you're doing some other things in your life. You're working in film now. You're actually making a role to jump into the film industry now. Is that right?
Yeah. I'm going to. We're filming a web series. It's going to begin filming in October. It's kind of a dark comedy. And we definitely want it to be somewhat anime-inspired. That's what I said to my DOP, actually, who's currently, getting things ready for the shots. And I said, I want it to be, anime-inspired. And so he was actually watching anime in preparation to get some ideas of the way I want it shot.
Wow, I didn't even know that. That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
That's even more appropriate to have you on the podcast then. But people now, because this might be on your YouTube channel, you might put a link. Some people may not be interested in the trip to Japan. Maybe they just want to hear about what you're doing more recently with this film project you're doing. So people, I'm going to put timestamps in the details of the podcast. So if you don't want to listen to, or if you want to listen to a specific part of the podcast, you can just skip to that part for your convenience. You see, people, we care. We care about you and what you want to listen to. So, but for the record, you should be listening to the whole damn podcast because we put a lot of work into these things to entertain the people,
I agree. And just to keep that going, randomly, I'm going to put sex talk in it. But you're going to have to listen to the entire thing to find it.
You see? And I'm glad we got the female saying it, because if it was a guy, if it was me, there'll be all sorts of backlash coming, emails coming in. But, hey, Kath, if you want to do that, I'm all up for it, man.
I'm an easygoing girl, so that's fine with me. Let's see who can find it. It's going to be like finding a needle in a haystack. I'll just do it really randomly.
Oh, yeah. Oh, why not? Don't worry. And none of that will be edited, so don't worry about that.
That's fine. We'll keep it friendly for the audience. That's cool.
All right. So first of all, for the people who don't know, maybe there's some people that just follow the podcast that don't know who CAFFINEJedi is. Why the hell have you got this lady on? Who is she? Tell me a bit. Give us some general stuff about, just the basics. Who are you? What do you like? What do you do? Who is CAFFINEJedi? What is up?
Well, my name is Stephanie, if anyone ever wants to get into it. Yes, Stephanie. I am from Miami originally. I'm a Latin American, so I sometimes talk about, Latino culture and stuff, which is always fun and interesting and sometimes also crazy. But, yeah, essentially I was just average middle-class girl. I used to like anime when I was in probably even middle school, back in the Sailor Moon days. And then, Toonami came and rescued me from like the mundaneness of like Pokemon. I was like, oh my God, what is this? That's when I probably started getting into like Japan culture, Japanese culture. But I actually have to say, it even goes further back than that. I think when I was in second grade, this is no lie, we used to have this thing called like, the Parade of the Worlds or something, and every class would pick a country and, study about their culture and like, dress up in, traditional garb and stuff. And my second grade class had Japan. And that was the first time I was like really into it because like, they put a little kimono on me that my grandmother actually made because my grandmother was, she was a seamstress. So she like went to like a library, just picked up some books and was like, oh, I'll just make you one. So yeah, I had this little kimono on me and I was like, wow, this is great. I love this. I'm totally going to figure out what Japan is about. And, that's how it came to be.
Ooh, the precursor for things to come.
Yep.
And it's funny because, you see, you lived in Miami, moved to Japan, and now, just jumping to the future, you're in England with us right now. You're with the Brits.
That's right. This is my new home.
We'll get to how that came to be near the end of the podcast, but I'd just like to say, man, obviously people know I'm a Brit. Maybe people say my accent's kind of mixed up American and British or whatever, but there's such a symbiosis between the British and the Brits and the Yanks. I'm just loving it, man. I mean, Spill.com, we have a tight relationship. Most of the people on here, Corey coming over. We recently had a Spill party where we actually met.
Yes, exactly. I actually went to the Spill party. So to encourage people to go to further Spill parties, should there be other ones in the England area, I will always go to them.
Nice. I even missed you at the last one because we didn't know each other at that time, but, we were both there. This time we did see each other, but, I was running around. You saw I was trying to do this video stuff with Corey, and that actually didn't even work out. So we only got to have one drink and speak for like 10 minutes, so I was a little bit disappointed, but, we're talking now, so, we'll catch up down the line. And because you're in England anyway, you never know, we might link up or something and do some things in the future and stuff, so...
Yeah, I'm a 52-minute train ride away from London, Victoria, It's really right there. I go to London, not often, but whenever I'm in the mood to burn money, that's when I go to London. It's like, yeah, just go to London. You can never go to London. This is also something you'll learn about going to Tokyo and most giant metropolitan cities, is like, you'll just burn money. Burn it.
You coming from America to London, our exchange rate. Well, we are proud to say our exchange rate is slightly higher. Obviously, you might not have found that too enjoyable coming to live here now, but as well as the weather being shit. That's probably another thing you didn't enjoy as well.
Your weather, it is shit. You can't even clean it up. No, it's absolutely true. The stereotype is true. English weather sucks.
It's not a stereotype. It's a fact of life.
It really is.
It's so bad. But anyway, I digress. Man, so just talking about how I got to find you because, ironically, I don't want to say it was kismet, but a while ago, I think I was looking to speak to some people in Japan when I was doing these Japan podcasts, and I saw one of your videos on, but again, it's kind of hard to approach people on YouTube because they get so many comments. You already had so many followers. But then when I saw you had a video on Spill about bathing.
Oh, bathing in Japan.
Bathing in Japan. That was hilarious. And I'm actually going to put that video, people, in the post that I create. The YouTubers that already subscribe to you probably already seen it. But, if you want to see CAFFINEJedi at her best and the kind of videos she's been doing, that's a great example. And I really love that video. But before we get into that, let's go back and let's talk a little bit about you and anime, because from watching your videos, and you already said that you was watching anime through Cartoon Network, Toonami, etc. One of the things you said in one of your past videos, which I found quite interesting, was that anime kind of inspired you. Like there was one character in particular that you said inspired you.
It was Ryoko from Tenchi Muyo. I love Ryoko. She's my hero. It's a really silly, cheesy 14-year-old emo story, because I was 14 and emo. So when I was 14, I was in love, quote unquote, 14-year-old love, with a boy who I was rejected by, and I was completely heartbroken, kind of. And I was like, this sucks. And then I would watch Tenchi Muyo, and, Ryoko was always getting, messed around with by Tenchi, and she was always so in love with him, and he didn't give half a crap about her. And I was like, I know you're feeling, Ryoko, and you're sexy and cool, and you're super strong, and he's giving you shit. fuck Tenchi.
Oh yeah, man. I totally Tenchi was such a. I hate those kind of male character anime that he's got all these girls. Well, it's one of the original anime harems of all time, anyway.
Yeah.
But he has all these girls around him, and Ryoko, and that Ryoko, stop it, Ryoko.
Don't sneak into my bath, Ryoko. Don't take off my clothes, Ryoko. I'm like, God, man, you know, Tenchi was not anything against gay people, but Tenchi was gay, right? Because that was my only explanation for it.
I don't blame you, but they did have that third. I know I'm getting into it now, people. They did have that third season, Tenchi in love, and
it was so when they renewed it. I remember it was so bad.
Not a lot of people liked it, but there was one episode where actually Tenchi and Ryoko went on a date.
Yes, but that one I remember. That's the one with Sakuya. That's Tenchi in Tokyo, right? Are we thinking of?
Yeah, exactly.
Tenchi was a douche. He's a douche, especially in that season. He leads poor Ryoko on and then makes out behind her back. What a jerk.
I wish you never brought that up. I was trying to put a positive light on Tenchi, but you really can't. He's an arsehole, and he actually, in one of the movies, he actually slapped her as well.
Yeah, I remember that. I was like, God, this guy is absolutely horrible. There is nothing redeeming about him. Actually, I wanted her to date, if this was possible, obviously, because you get into the fanficky cross worlds. I was like, yeah, her and Gene Starwind should date each other, because Gene Starwind is awesome. And
yeah.
they should hook up. That would be a match made and awesome.
Yeah, man. And funny enough, talking about you in anime as well, see, this is another thing I like about you. You even got a little bit raunchy. You even reviewed a hentai on your channel as well.
I did. That was hilarious. The weird thing about that one, I don't think I even remember the title. The weird thing about
I think it was Sex Slaves. I think you said it was.
Oh, it was something like that. It was like, I think it was based in like Constantinople or something. It was like very like S&M style, and on top of that, it was like the subtitles were in Spanish. So, like I said, I'm from a Latin American background. So, but you know, English is still my first language. So, when I was reading it in Spanish, I was like, Jesus! I had to pause like every 20 seconds. I was like, what the hell are they saying?
You know, we recently had an episode where we spoke about hentai in depth, and I never really got the female perspective. So, very briefly, since I have you on, what's your thoughts on hentai in general?
Well, I can give you like a couple different thoughts on it. There's there's the good, the bad, and the ugly, I guess you could say. The good is that, you know, I find it interesting. I find it fun in the same way that, like, you know, anime can be fun and, you know, whatever. I'm not by any means some kind of prude about it, you know. Sometimes I find it sexy. Sometimes I find it like just so absolutely ridiculous that you have to watch it just for the ridiculousness factor. And you wonder to yourself, who the hell is turned on by this? But I always find that hentai always takes a turn for the disgusting. Like, you're like, wow, this is not too bad. Getting kind of hot. Wow, what the fuck was that? What the fuck was that? You know, you always have one of those moments like, holy shit, I'm like traumatized now. Oh my God. And you know,
it's pretty notorious for just going off the deep end, you know, and most people, like I said on the podcast, most people go for it. Just, have you seen that shit? The tentacles and the dicks and the tubes and the 10 men and the giant dicks and the demons and
then in the end, everybody shits themselves. Like, yeah, sure, cool. Suppositories. I'm sure you guys love those. Like, those are that gets into some twisted areas. But you know, you have to admire the effort put in the art of hentai. You're like, man, this is like really well animated, and you know, people dub this shit over. So imagine being in like that booth as you're like dubbing in hentai.
I'm telling you, you hit the nail on the head. Sometimes I've watched some English dubbed hentai. They don't even try. I'm sorry, I have to say, if you ever watch English dubbed hentai, they don't even try. Like, oh, give it to me. Oh, you're fucking me so hard. Oh my God, I'm about to come. Oh yeah. I'm just like, oh my God.
And then they collect their paycheck out the door. Yeah, they're like, there you go. Your paycheck's waiting for you at the window. Go get it at the reception desk.
But anyway, people, I know we're going off on the one again, but again, I just wanted to get the female perspective because people seem to think, you know, sex and hentai is all about guys and male wish fulfillment.
Well, the one thing I definitely give that Japan does, probably more than like American porn or porn in general, is that they do have hentai directed at women. They actually make it directly for women. It's a lot more like romantic. Admittedly, they get a lot more of the pretty boys in it and stuff like that. Even the yaoi, you know, it's mostly for women.
Okay, so just to end this hentai-ish discussion, I'm sorry, this anime-ish discussion of altogether, where do you stand with anime now in your life as it goes now?
I have to say, as a 27-year-old. You know, at this point, I watch it just out of nostalgia. I haven't started a new series in years. Like, at least a good 4 years, I haven't seen anything new. Like, I'll just occasionally, like, channel surf and be like, oh, what's this? I think the problem that's happened now, it's not a problem. It's just a matter of growing up. You know, anime is about teenagers. And as a teenager, it speaks to you. It really does. You know, you're sometimes in like a boring, mundane life and things are like, you know, just never going right for you. And you can really relate to these heroes sometimes who are, you know, in a similar situation. And, you know, you live through them because all these fantastical things happen to them and you really want to be them, which is, you know, because you're stuck at a place that's kind of boring and nothing happens, which is what happens when you're 16. But when you're 27, like me, and have had like loads of adventures of your own, you're like, you don't need to live through them in the same way. And it's not to say that I'll still watch them for, you know, out of nostalgia's sake. And I still enjoy them. I think the problem probably has become, but you know, I could be wrong. I haven't watched a new series in a long time. It's that you become too used to the tropes in anime by watching too many. You're like, wow, this is exactly like this anime. Oh, this is exactly like that anime. Oh my God, they use the exact same premise as this anime. And you just, it's like almost overly repetitive.
It's funny because there was a time, probably like 5 or 6 years ago, if someone would have said it to me, I'd have thought, oh, you know, what are you talking about? You're just so egotistical. What are you talking about? But no, I feel the same way. Well, you're 27, I'm 30, and basically, I feel the same way because when I watch most animes, they are geared towards teenagers because the characters are teenagers.
Yeah, it's true.
And you know, when you're a teenager and you're watching, you know, girls breasting up, it's like, ooh, that's nice and tantalizing. But when you're a 30-year-old man, you start to feel like, you know, where's the story?
I think what I find especially hard now is when I'm 27 is like, let's say you watch like, especially Gundam, but let's use Gundam Wing because that's an easy one. Everybody knows that one. You have like Hiro Yui, who's like, what, like 14 or 15 doing all this crazy stuff. And then you think back to yourself when you were 14 or 15 and all the 14 and 15-year-olds you meet now, and you're like, yeah, right. It's you notice the flaws more, I guess, as you're older, but it's still fun for like nostalgia's sake. And you know, you still have that J-pop that you listen to and you're like, yeah, you know, it just brings you back to it.
Yeah, I think it's the repetitiveness that's really getting to me, and it being focused on teenagers. If they just, I'm sorry, it does get to a point where you need to. I can't stand I've said this on nearly every podcast for the last 5 podcasts. I can't stand all the protagonists being teenagers. I can't attach to them anymore because they're in the same stupid character. Oh my god! Anyway,
I agree. Actually, I really agree with that.
Anyway, let's move on. So, now, before we get into, now we're going to move into what you came to hear living in Japan. Now, before we get into it, I do want to say, people, this is going to be very Cliff Notey. Now, CAFFINEJedi has got like 100 videos on her YouTube channel where she did videos when she was in Japan. You could see her in Japan talking about experiences in Japan. This is no substitute for that. This is just like a general, I'm going to try to get a good scope of everything she's kind of discussed in general for your convenience. But this is no substitute to her videos. Her videos are great. I really like them. You know, and they're the number one source you should go to if you want to know about her experiences in Japan. We'll talk about that as we go on as well, but I'm just saying this is very Cliff Note hangy, and you know we ain't got all the time in the world to tell her whole life story in Japan. So, you know, people, just bear with us, and I hope you enjoy. So, we're going to do this in a certain way. I'm going to try to lead the conversation and ask you a series of questions. Feel free to go into anecdotes, ad-libs, and anything that you just remember. But because I've watched all your videos and I took all these notes, you know, hopefully I can bring up some things that can stir up some memories or some other stuff. But
all right, cool, yeah.
I'm going to start us off by a quote, which sounds corny as hell.
Go ahead.
A famous person once said, "Living in a foreign country is the third greatest stress you can have in your life, after getting over the death of a loved one and going through a divorce." This is said by 2 famous people, actually. David Sedaris, who's a very popular NPR podcaster, radio personality, and Woody Allen. These 2 would know. I'm not going to get into these 2. But anyway, what do you think about that statement?
I would say I agree and disagree. I think it definitely depends the country you're going to. Like, compared to England, I find England to be a piece of cake. Like, people always ask me, they're like, how's living in England? I'm like, it's like living in America with gray skies, you know? The currency's slightly different. There's not these huge canyons of differences. Now, living in Japan, you definitely get those sometimes, but at the same time, it's still a modern Western country. I know people are like, it's Western. I would consider Japan a Western country. It's definitely part of the first world. You know, you can bathe every day. There's not bombings going on. You can walk down the street by yourself, no problem. You know, it's not comparative to like Afghanistan or something like that.
Yeah, no, yeah.
So I would say it depends the country you're going to. That varies the stress level. It depends how you're going there. Are you going with a student group? Are you going straight alone, as I did? Or, you know, are you moving there with your boyfriend, loved one, family? There's different levels of it. There's a lot of stress to be said. I'm not going to, like, you know, clean it up for people. If you do this, you really need to think long and hard about it and prepare yourself mentally a lot more than I think people are ready to do.
The reason why I asked use such a corny quote is because, you know, you went on your own. Is that right?
Yeah, I did.
Of your own accord. No, you had no family out there, right? No connection.
Nothing.
You went to live there on your own. And apparently in life, that's one of the biggest, most adventurous, courageous things you can do. Move to a country, for all intents and purposes, let's say a non-English speaking country, to live there. And to start this officially, tell us how that decision actually came about.
Okay, well, I think I started off like a lot of people, which is that I was like an anime buff when I was in high school, and I really liked it, and then I went to university. And I was still like, I would say my first year of university, I was still like an anime buff, and I was still really into it. You know, through a job I had, I heard about the JET program, which, if anyone doesn't know about the JET program, it's a program used to recruit English teachers, particularly native speakers, to go and teach English in Japan. The JET program, it has a lot of good and bad points, but I didn't, let's just say, long story short, I didn't get into the JET program. I applied, I made it through the interview process, and I got to like the second stage, and then they wanted me as an alternate. And I didn't want to wait. What you need to do essentially, if you want to become an English teacher, if you're a native English speaker, you need to have a bachelor's degree. It doesn't matter really in what subject, but the reason they need this bachelor's degree is because the visa application requires it. It's just a rule they have. Sorry, them's the breaks. If you're like, oh, I don't have that. That's just how it works. I can't change it unless you're marrying a Japanese person, at which point you can get a visa through like, you know, husband, wife, whatever.
So what year was that you went to Japan?
2008.
And when did you leave?
2011, I want to say.
Was that your first time traveling abroad?
By myself and across any major oceans, yes.
And how old was you at the time?
I was 22.
Okay, cool. And how was the flight, if you can remember?
Well, let's see. I remember getting to the airport. You know, the funny thing is, and I say this especially to women out there, because I think guys get away with it a little more, is that your family is going to try and stop you and tell you that it's wrong and it's stupid and you're doing something bad and this is not a good idea because X, Y, and Z will happen to you, especially because you're a girl and, you know, you always get that freaking speech. And it's not to be taken lightly as this, like, your family's lying to you and everything's going to be fine and hunky-dory. Obviously, always, you know, keep notice of your surroundings and things like that. But have a sense of adventure and just do it. And sometimes, like, I literally told my mother, I applied for a job. This was actually right after I had my university degree. I think I got my degree in like May. I was in Japan in June. This is not a joke. So I was applying for jobs in the United States because I think a good website if people want to look for jobs is called Gaijin Pot. That's probably your best bet to start looking.
In Japan?
If you want to, yeah, but you can look for jobs from here, like from any country and then apply there. There's like job listings and what they want.
Okay. So
I started looking there. I applied to a bunch of places, and, you know, then I got a job. It was a lot simpler than I thought.
I have to say, the thing that interests me the most, and I just want to clarify, was it mostly your just interest in Japan that made you go there? You didn't really have... Like, you didn't have a goal to go to Japan for a specific reason. You just thought, I'm interested in Japan. I think I want to live there. And was that basically it?
Yeah, I think there was that. I think there was a need for change. I had lived in Miami my entire life. I was 22. I was like, I've been here my whole life. I have my degree. There's nothing holding me back. I don't have children. I'm not married. I had a boyfriend, but let's just say that didn't work out. Which is also something I warn everyone who goes there.
It's admirable, man. I mean, just to pick up and go and decide that, you know what, I need a change. You know, I can go to Canada. I can go to England, which you obviously ended up in anyway. But I'm going to Japan. That's cool, man. And I admire a young Caucasian woman going to a different country, because we've all seen Taken.
Oh,
you know,
God.
I know people are going to think I'm sexist. I'm not being sexist, but you know, for a single woman to go to live in another country, you could have ended up on the slave trade. You know what I'm saying?
I don't think so. I think you have to be like pretty freaking stupid. Well, no offense. Like, not. I know that sometimes, you know, things just happen. They just happen. But, you know, you always have to have your wits about you anywhere you go. And I would say, yeah, you just do it. Go ahead. Have that adventure. Have your wits about you. Don't be afraid to scream for help is something, especially if we get more into the ideas of living in Japan. I think we'll get a little bit more into that later. But seriously, just because Japan is known for being a quiet society that, you know, ignores certain things, fuck that. Somebody grabs your butt on the train, you scream, you kick, you bite, you make the biggest scene ever. You act like crazy gaijin. It doesn't matter. Just do it.
So, okay. All right. It's all right. So you've made the commitment. You've gone to Japan. So initially, what was your game plan? How long did you initially think you wanted to stay there for initially?
I was thinking I was going to do 1 year and then go back home and go to law school.
Okay. And once you were there, did you have the support you needed from? It was a kind of a job-assisted placement that got you there.
Yeah.
And obviously, now you're there. Would you say that's when the hard part started? You know, finding a place, getting that initial settling down. How was that?
Well, I'll say that most legitimate jobs, if you're looking for a job, will help you find a place to live before you get there. They should. This is usually a requirement to get a visa. This is like part of their job, actually, is to get you a place to live. Now, whether you want to live in the place that they've decided for you is up to you. You also should do your research about how much it's going to cost approximately, you know, because sometimes the schools will actually overcharge you for rent and then keep that part. This is not a joke. It's actually what happens. But one of the problems when you live in Japan is that it's hard sometimes to rent as a gaijin. They insist sometimes that it has to be a Japanese person. It's the truth. That's just how it works sometimes.
Oh, since you keep throwing that word around, for the people that don't know what a gaijin is, what is a gaijin?
A gaijin is a foreigner. Essentially, it's a way Japanese people say foreigner, but they'll never actually call you gaijin to your face because it's a little bit too forward. They call you gaikokujin.
Okay. Well, to us non-Japanese speaking, would that make any difference? Is it like a negative projective word, or is it just?
It's not. I think that some people tried to make it that. They're like, "Oh, you shouldn't call us gaijin," but I'm like, I don't care. They don't mean it in a negative sense. If they say it like, and they never will. Just Japanese think it's not that it's considered rude. It's just considered too forward to call someone a gaijin. You have to call them gaikokujin. It's a little bit more respectful, especially if you don't know a person. You know, and most Japanese people you meet won't know you, so they'll say that.
Maybe I'm getting too technical here, and I know some Japanese people listen to this might think, why is he asking this question? But let's just say if a Japanese person was born in America and then they came to Japan, would the Japanese call them a gaijin as well?
No, they would be Japanese.
Okay, well, I know I might be splitting hairs on that one, but, you know, some people might want to know that. But anyway, let's talk more about the initial settling in stuff. So you get to Japan, you're getting your place, that's all sorted. Tell me about settling down to stuff like the weather, the climate. Was it what you expected? How was those little adjustments? You know, the insects, the weather, the landscape. How was those adjustments?
Well, I would say the place I lived in was called Fujiyoshida. It's a small town at the base of Mount Fuji. It's very small. And yeah, for a while I think I didn't know where to go, and I was scared to go to places by myself, which is something you actually have to get over once you get there. So there was other English teachers, because I worked at a school, who they kind of helped me, you know, wet my feet, if you will, in the area. But I would say it varies from school to school how much help you're going to get. In my first school, it was pretty much just like, okay, so here's the grocery store, here's the post office, here's the bank, and here is City Hall. The end. Hope you have a good life. Like, that was more like it.
All right. So fundamentally, obviously, how was the language barrier? You get there, or did you have to learn any as a precursor to come in there? How did you find surviving with the Japanese or the English?
I would say that most Japanese people do not speak English. If you somehow are told, oh yeah, they all speak English, this is a total lie. This is not true. Mm. So you learn to make up your own sign language pretty fast.
Well, this might be the same answer, but does that go for reading as well? English? Oh,
yeah. You can sometimes just ask a Japanese person what it is, like, nani kore, like, and you point to, like, the letters, the kanji, and they'll tell you. I knew hiragana and katakana before I got there, which is helpful to some degree, but obviously there's so much more kanji in there. But to be honest, most restaurants, at least, they have, like, pictures on their menu, so, you could just kind of pick it out. My actual fear, though this never happened to me, but this was an honest-to-God fear of mine, was that I've heard of restaurants where they will openly not serve people who are not Japanese. Yeah, these places actually exist. I, however, never found one. And if they did exist and actually were one, I went there with a Japanese person and no one ever said anything.
You just reminded me of something really a bit off topic. Have you ever seen that movie, The Ramen Girl?
I did not, actually.
It's a movie. Do you know what it's about? There was an American remake. It's a movie with Brittany Murphy, and it's about an American girl who goes to Japan, and she splits up with her boyfriend, and she left in Japan, and she has to work in a restaurant. It's a really, really cool movie. Brittany Murphy's dead now, rest in peace. But yeah, I think I might name this episode after you, The Ramen Girl.
I know a great ramen shop.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes.
Do you tell?
My favorite ramen shop, I don't know how specific people will get, but I could actually tell you how to get there even from Tokyo. If you go to Japan and you make it to Tokyo and you catch, I think it's called the Fuji line or something like that, whatever. You make it to Fuji Yoshida. You get off at Gekkoji Station. It's tiny as hell. You get off at Gekkoji Station, you walk straight down the hill, and you're going to see a red sign. And you're going to see an old man probably smoking a cigarette in the back in a tiny little shithole of a ramen shop called Bunka Ramen. This ramen is the best ramen I've ever had in my life. And the owner, the old man smoking a cigarette, he is kick-ass.
I'm telling you, man, a couple of years, when I go to Japan, I'll be going through this podcast, be like, thanks, CAFFINEJedi, I got that, and I'll be going there, man. Thanks for the heads up.
No, tell him he might remember me. I'm not sure if he will though, but I did go there quite a lot.
Snotty Latino guy, remember her? Maybe,
exactly. He used to give me free gyoza for English lessons. It was a good trade.
Oh, cool, cool. All right, well, let's talk about settling down. So you're in Japan, you've got kind of the basics down. We'll move into some more interesting topics about basics in a moment, but let's talk about things like building a career in Japan. So you went there as an English-speaking teacher, basically for the non-English speaking Japanese. And talk about the career, what you understand or your experiences with the career sector in Japan and, the work sector.
Well, it's another one of those, the good, the bad, and the ugly kind of situations. I found that it's both good and bad in the sense that you'll have a middle class income and pretty much steady work, and you'll probably not get fired, probably. But it's too easy to get trapped in that. It's how could I say this? It's just like you become so comfortable as an English teacher. You're like, well, it's steady work and da-da-da-da-da. And I think it's the easiest job to get in Japan.
It sounds like a sure shot of sorts.
But when you want to get out of it, as eventually what happened to me was that I just couldn't see myself doing it forever, or at least for a long enough period of time to save up money to open my own business, which is essentially what my plan was should I have stayed.
I heard about that, and I was very interested to hear because it got to do with some of your cooking talents, which I was very excited about.
Yeah. It just didn't end up happening essentially because I didn't want to do. I mean, some people do. Some people literally they pour themselves into their work and it works out well for them. And some people really, really enjoy teaching. I actually also really enjoy teaching. There's just, how could I say this? if you're a teacher and you enjoy it, there's a lot of emotional strings to being a teacher that are very hard.
Really? What do you mean?
Let's see. For me, my first year there wasn't so bad. I was at an Kiowa, which is essentially means I had like hundreds of students. But even then, I would have like, some students who were like so cool and funny and interesting. And then they would leave and then I would feel sad. And then I was even told like when I was leaving that like, apparently one of my students like cried for like a couple days straight when they found out I was leaving. And I was like, oh my God, that's horrible. It was like a little 7-year-old girl.
Well, that does make sense. That does make as a teacher, I guess you do have that attachment, like the mother hen. You bring them up, you see them on their journey, and you have to let them go.
Yes,
in a sense.
Pretty much. And then the next year, it would like get gradually worse each year, because the second year I had a baby class, which was exactly like it sounded. I had 1.5-year-old students, and they were exactly that. They didn't speak neither Japanese nor English, so I was teaching them right from the get-go. And with kids this small, they really, really start to take after you. And I remember at the end of that, the mothers from the class made me like a scrapbook with all these pictures, and I just cried like a baby when they gave it to me. I was like, oh, God, goodbye,
Well, not to be negative, but I am curious. Do you feel you were treated any different way because you're a Westerner, American, maybe, in Japan?
Well, let's see. I would say for the most part, I got treated positively. There's some, I would say the only people who sometimes give you a little bit of like a look are like some, and I repeat some old men. They're kind of annoying. Like there was one guy in a town I lived in. He was convinced I was putting away the garbage wrong, and because somebody kept leaving plastic bottles in the wrong spot. It wasn't me. And I checked with all the other people who lived in my building, and it wasn't them. And this old man just had it out for me to the point that I was once hanging out with a Japanese friend of mine, and he went to go scold my Japanese friend about how I was putting the garbage in the wrong spot. And I was like, what the fuck? This guy never talks to me. All he does is give me dirty looks every time I pass by him. So then I would talk shit about him in English whenever I passed by him, just, to get him back for his mean-ass looks.
All right. Well, you know what? Since we've kind of delved into this realm, let's move into the realm of making relationships, making friends. And before you start talking about that, I just want to say, people, obviously this is just based on CAFFINEJedi's experiences. She's not speaking on behalf of everyone. This isn't a general sweeping statement. She's already stated this on many of her videos. So I don't want to hear any bitching emails about she's making any kind of sweeping comments. She's just talking based on her own experiences. I just want to say that before anyone says anything. So tell us about your experiences with making friends, making relationship with the Japanese people in Japan, in your case.
I found that the beginning part when I was in Japan was very difficult to make friends with. Well, obviously to make friends with Gaijin is a little easier because, similar cultural background. And it varies depending on, if you like the people or not. That's just how it works. Do you like your coworkers? I think when living in Japan, you become a lot closer to coworkers than you ever did before. Like your coworkers are also like your buddies that you hang out with, like all the time. And even take vacations with. That's what ended up happening a couple times. When it comes to Japanese people, I would say absolutely you have to do it, but you have to do it more tactfully than I think than people are ready to do, which is Japanese, the way you become friends with people, you don't share as much as, we're used to sharing. We're like, oh yeah, I did this. Man, I was totally hammered last night. Oh my God, this is crazy. And then you find out that, Japanese people, they'll never talk about themselves personally unless they're drunk.
Oh, that's such a stereotype that you're confirming, because how many animes have you seen that they all go to the karaoke bar and then they let loose and they start talking shit, going crazy after they're drunk, but when they're at work they're very stoic, they're very reserved, this is not a racial comment, but their facial expression is very hard to read, what I mean? There seems to be like a stone kind of essence to them. Do you know what I mean? Well,
there is a saying, and this was actually said to me by a Japanese person. A Japanese person has 3 faces. A face they show to their family, a face they show to their friends, and a face they never show themselves.
Wow.
Yes. So it's I think that when you come to understand that it's not that you have to understand that they can't almost open themselves up to you. It's just not acceptable for their culture to do so, and you have to accept that. And it's hard because we're used to our good friends we open up to. And if they don't open up to us, then they're not our friends, right?
Yeah.
And then in Japan, you have to kind of like loosen yourself up a little bit. You have to understand they might not be so willing to open up as quickly as we're used to. And, you know, you have to be prepared for that. And you have to be prepared for that in relationships. That being said, do not get taken advantage of by, you know, someone who wants to quote unquote date you, you know, and they don't want to open up and then they still expect things from you in like the same way as a girlfriend or a boyfriend does. You know, there's a give and take aspect. There's a give and take, but you have to find the balance. And I can't tell you what the balance is or what it's not. I just know that it is, and it does happen where, you know, somebody gets taken advantage of.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different country. It's a different type of people. You have to expect some kind of cultural differences, even down to the personality of the people. And yes, that is kind of a general sweeping statement. But, you know, it's just like you said, even the British and Americans, we differ. We're not exactly 100% the same. We're very similar, but, you know, there are some differences. You living in the UK now, you can even tell there are some differences. Maybe we're more outlandish in some ways.
I think so. I found that really, like, I always thought the British were so reserved, and I, like, come here and it's like everybody just tells you everything. I'm like, wow, you guys are so much more open. But then again, I came here pretty much straight after Japan, so it could have been that.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, let's talk about. We're kind of already touching on this anyway, but let's go into cultural observations. And you know, you went to Japan, and I want to ask you questions about stuff like ideologies, social status. You know, the standing of people. How did you? What were your observations about that in Japan?
I would say,
was it crucial? I mean, those things, were they really crucial? The ideologies, the social status, and you know.
It's really hard for me to say because like I'm not Japanese, so I'm kind of like in an outside bubble from that. And it is called the gaijin bubble. You know, you stay out of like, you know, basically you live your own life and you don't have to deal with a lot of the things Japanese people deal with, particularly in the workplace. There is a lot of ranking in the workplace. It usually comes with experience, which sounds good on paper. Like, oh yeah, the more experienced person should, you know, be higher ranked. But sometimes experience outranks competence. And so the more competent person, they basically have to shut up and go along with whatever the more experienced person says. And that's really hard. And you sometimes see it like when people like talk about, you know, because Japan, they had a big economical crash in the 1990s. And people ask, like, how did this happen? And they're like, yeah, because they couldn't adapt. They couldn't adapt fast enough. One of the big things that they couldn't do fast enough was make the microchip. And because, you know, Japanese are very slow to change the way they do things. And this also goes with, like, if you're teaching English, you'll find this. Because every English school I ever worked at, they always bitched about how, like, oh, we're getting less and less students. We're getting less and less students. And we're like, well, maybe you should change, you know, your business model that you haven't changed since, like, the 70s. Oh, no, can't do that. Can't do that. That's far too difficult, you know. But it's just like that. It's just, and there is also a culture of, you know, to admit that you're wrong is essentially like one of the worst things to do.
Really?
Oh yeah. This is like it's annoying a little bit as a gaijin because basically as a gaijin, they will put blame on you even if it's not your fault because you're okay with saying, yeah, it's my fault and I'm sorry.
I thought the Japanese were all about apologizing.
They are, but you're not supposed to. It's still considered very wrong of you. Like, they would much prefer it to be somebody else's fault. And you find yourself sometimes just saying, I'm sorry, just to be like, I just want this shit to be over. I'll just say I'm sorry now. Yes, I'm sorry. It was totally my fault because, you know, you left the fire extinguisher on or something like that, you know? You'll just be like, yes, I'm sorry. I didn't tell you about not turning it off. So it's my fault.
Okay, I'm just asking out of curiosity. If they ain't apologizing so much, what does that mean? Does that mean they're just kind of ignoring things, or they're just kind of being silent or a lot?
No, like I said, okay, to apologize is a bad thing, but the lower your rank, the more you're supposed to apologize.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, and again, people just expect you as a gaijin to apologize just because you can, and it's okay, and it's not bad for you. They even know that they're like, for you to apologize, you're not going to lose anything. It's not going to be a big shame on you. It's just going to be whatever for you.
I don't know if I call this a stereotype, but is there a big respect for the elderly out there? Because that's always something you see in anime as well. You know, respect the elders. Wow. The elders know.
I wish it was like that, and it's absolutely not. It's even the opposite of that, and it's really sad.
Okay, that's enlightening.
Yes, it's definitely, they say within the last 15 to 20 years, nobody really visits their, like, I'm Latin, so I visit my grandparents. Well, when I was living in Miami, I would see them like 3-4 times a week, go there, they cook for me, we always are together, and, we're very close to each other. And I expected Japan to be something very similar. And in reality, I mean, it depends the family, but like in reality, there's people who like, their grandparents live literally up the mountain and they see them like once every 5 years. And half these people don't remember what their cousins' names are. I'm like, I could tell you all my cousins. They're like, I have a cousin. I don't remember their name though. I'm like, and this is a first cousin of yours? Yeah, but I don't remember their name. I don't really see them.
It's so funny because in anime, you always see the youth always having a close relationship with grandparents and having to detach with their actual parents.
I'm sure that because that was the old.
Obviously, maybe that's just a stereotype again. No. I have to say,
it existed. It really was it's a system. It was an older system that of people live with the parents and the parents take care of the grandparents, and you have like a 3-generation household. This used to exist. The issue that has happened, the reason it doesn't exist anymore, is that the jobs have migrated outside of these towns. Essentially, if you want a job in Japan, like as a Japanese person, you live in a big city, and you move away from those towns, so you leave that life behind. And it's very isolating. They say there's a big isolation problem, like that generation of isolated people, because they're away from their families, they're away from their friends. They just go to work. They live in dormitories of the companies sometimes. And, they don't really get to see the family like they used to. And, yeah, I would say, like an ex-boyfriend of mine, I think he, talked to his mom, twice a year or something like that. It was, really, it's like Skype exists nowadays. Come on.
All right, well, let's get to the last part of the kind of relationship parts. And I don't need you to go too deep into this because, again, CAFFINEJedi has gone into this in her videos, into a lot of depth, but I just want you to touch a bit about romantic relationships in Japan and dating and from a female perspective. And since we're on the topic of romance and all that, I also want you to talk about kind of misconceptions about sex and the otaku, groper, pervert, hentai culture, what you experienced in Japan. If you can clear up any and all misconceptions you have from your experiences about that kind of, love sex topic in general.
Okay, let's start off with a big misconception, which is that Japanese men love having sex. They don't. They actually have the least amount of sex, I think, in the entire world. Look it up. It's actually a statistic.
Men are men, though.
Well, no, it's a culture of, it sounds really bad, but it's a culture of masturbation.
Come on. Do you know how much hentai come out of there? Of course it's a culture of masturbation.
But it's
that's no doubt.
It's like a preference for it, though. You wouldn't think that, but a lot of Japanese men have gotten to the point where they actually prefer, that's why it becomes they love the whole robots and they love digital, these games and stuff so much more because they're
that doesn't surprise me.
That's actually kind of what's, I think they said it was some crazy statistic, 25% of men that are 35 are still virgins.
Yeah, no. You mentioned this. I saw this in your videos, and when you look at the anime, they're all 90% of them are based on just wish fulfillment, looking at girls getting fondled or having big breasts, and the hentai. Obviously, there's such a big fetish for, like you said, the maid robots, the maid cafes. They have a big industry for making condoms, for making obviously sex toys. When it comes to sex, Japan have a big fucking industry in so many different pockets of sex that when you're telling me that masturbation is a preference, although I think it's funny, it's not really surprising, to be honest with you. It's freakishly true.
It's something that I noticed while living in Japan. That's not to say that Japanese men aren't going to try and have sex with you if you're one. That's men are men, like you said. Men are men. That's just kind of what happened. I've had different experiences dating in Japan. I've dated Japanese men.
Let me help you. I'm sorry. As a Western guy, let me ask some specifics.
All right.
Now, obviously, you lived in America. You know how men got the game. We got a gameplay. What up, girl? You looking good, girl. Tell me how they roll in Japan. I know I'm pissing off some Japanese people, but tell me the Japan man's game? How did they lay it down on you? Their game. Tell me how their game plan works.
I'm sorry, Japanese men. Your game is awful. It's awful. You guys have horrible game. You guys have such horrible game that I must have seemed like some crazy fucking lovelorn American, because I would literally just like go right up to men and like just like straight up like start flirting with them. I'm like, you know what? You're cute. Let's do this. You know, how's it going? And I'll just take a seat and they'll be like, oh my God, you're talking to me. And they'll be like, freak out. And I'll be like, yeah, just take a drink, honey. Just take a drink. You'll be fine.
On you?
Oh, yeah. That's just how it, and that's kind of like how you kind of have to do it. You have to wait till they get drunk.
Wow. You had to make all the moves. Is that what you're basically saying?
I did. I honestly had to make all the moves. And everybody's like, oh, Japanese men, they like submissive women and da-da-da. I'm like, I'm telling you, man. You know, the thing is, Japanese men are very shy. They are. It's not to say that they're not interested in you, or they, you know, I mean, I'm sure there's some are interested, some not interested. The same thing. Sometimes it's not to say I wasn't hit on by Japanese men, and also there's some I'm interested in, some I'm not interested in. But to be honest, the way you meet is almost like not for the purpose of dating. Like I did meet some people just like online, like pen pals, and be like, let's meet up for coffee. And then like, you know, it's either like, okay, well, we hung out and this didn't work, so see you never. You know, a couple times there's that. And then there was like, you know.
I think in one of your videos, you actually mentioned there was one guy who kept sending you food.
Oh, yes, this guy was something. I wish I knew this guy, like I actually knew him. This was actually a pen pal of mine I had before I went to Japan. I'm going to tell you two pen pal stories, actually. One of them was, this guy, I kind of knew him, and he's like, oh, well, can I have your address? And everybody's like, what are you giving addresses out to crazy people you don't even know on the internet? Hell yeah, I did. Hell yeah. I locked my door at night. What's going to happen, you know? But this guy, he was constantly like, he lived in Kobe, and I mentioned, I would really like to try Kobe beef. The guy would mail like frozen Kobe beef, which, if anyone knows Kobe beef, it's very expensive. He never knew me. He never met me, and constantly was sending it. I was like, there's so much. I would just get like packets of meat at my door all the time.
He never saw a picture of you, not even a picture.
No, I sent him a picture. He said he was too shy to send me a picture. I mean, I sent him like just like a picture of me, like, yeah, like, hey, this is me, like, drinking sake with like, a thumbs up. There wasn't like a sexual picture by any means, but it was really interesting. I remember he even told me, he even said one time, I said, hey, if you're in, Yamanashi, or if you're even in Tokyo, I would love to thank you in person. And he's like, I can't, I'm just way too shy. I just can't do it. He actually said this.
Well, I have to ask, do you think this has got anything to do with you being a foreigner?
Yes and no. I think Japanese people are scared. It's a catch-22 for Japanese people, which is they're scared, they're embarrassed by their English, so they don't want to speak English. But they can't get better at English unless they speak it.
Unless they speak it, yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of the problem that a lot of Japanese people have.
Did you ever speak to Japanese women about Japanese men and dating?
Yes.
And did you get any advice? Did they confirm what you're telling me, that this is how it is?
Yes.
Japanese guys are very shy. So okay, there you
Absolutely.
go. It's not a misconception then.
No. Okay, there's a reason, and there's a reason that it's I'm not going to say it's easy to date as a Western man in Japan, but let's just say that women are more willing. Japanese women are more willing to try new things because, let's say, there's too many shy men who are too scared and are a bunch of virgins and prefer masturbation. So the odds are in your favor.
All right. Well, since we've already spoken about Japanese men to, an extent that some people are going to probably kill me in emails, why don't you tell us what you know about Japanese women and that same culture from your experiences, Japanese women with, sexism and relationships, and, maybe from what you've learned from your Japanese girlfriends / friends / co-workers. Tell me about them, because I know you had a lot to say about the Japanese women's fashion, Japanese women, the way they behave around boys. Enlighten us.
Well, I love their fashion. They have impeccable style. I have to say that.
Okay.
They definitely made me, it's like, I've always been kind of a tomboy. And I made a video about this, which was just me talking about my relationships with Japanese women. Because I think that sometimes people put Japanese women on like this pedestal of like, they're absolutely the perfect woman. They're submissive and beautiful, and they'll do whatever I want, and totally kawaii in every way. Yeah. And this is not to say there's anything wrong with Japanese women. What I'm trying to tell you is that they're human, and they are women in the end. They will bitch at you. They will cry. They will get moody. I'm a woman. I do this. And they will do the same. They will just do it in different ways. There's a different way of expressing themselves, essentially.
Any stereotypes I was going to ask that you would confirm or deny?
Okay, I would say the smile, the permanent smile that is just always on their face that you can't really read. And that is probably was one of the most difficult things for me to get past while living in Japan. And initially, when I was first living in Japan, it was so problematic that I didn't want to become friends with Japanese women in the beginning. I was like, I can't handle this anymore. I've been too burned by this. It's really hurting me. It's really these women are just, yeah. It's just and it was really heartbreaking at some points. I was just like, I don't know what's going on. They're just I can't stand it anymore. And then it took a while. It's funny because it was a half Japanese, half Filipina woman she was raised in Japan, born in Japan actually. So she's pretty much Japanese, who basically opened me up to telling me it was okay. You'll figure out, your way. You can be friends with people. You just have to you have to search. It's making friends in Japan is not easy. I'm not going to even clean it up for you. It's not easy, but it's possible and it will happen. And you just have to really, you're going to take some, you're going to meet some weirdos along the way. You're going to meet some weirdos in every alley. But when you find people who can be, the other thing you learn, and it's a part of actually growing up because I was there quite a while, is that you learn it's not just hard to make friends in Japan. You realize how hard it is to make friends outside of school. It's just something you really don't make friends in the same way you used to. It's just, in life, you know your group of friends and then you end up just hanging out with the same 5 people the rest of your life.
Yeah, no. Even though you've left Japan now, and I'm not jumping to the end, just asking, you still got some Japanese friends even now?
Oh,
You've
yeah.
carried through
Absolutely. I have my best friend. She's not Japanese. She's married to a Japanese guy. She has a baby now. I'm actually the godmother of that baby. Yay.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, she lives in Japan. We're going to go visit her probably around the holidays, maybe Christmas. Yeah, I still have quite a number of Japanese friends. Still there, yeah. I still keep quite in contact with people. See, people always bitch about how Facebook has ruined communication, but Facebook's the only way I talk to these people.
All right, well, let's move on to some other things. We've covered a lot of the relationship, personal things, which that was quite enlightening, I have to admit. And again, see, Caffeine's videos, they've gone into more depth than we've just covered now, but for the sake of the podcast, I'll just, move things along a little bit.
Okay.
So now let's talk about some more useful things that I think some people that actually moved to Japan want to know about. Tell us about some of the government system things and how you dealt with them. For example, banks, doctors, the police, the dentist, the DVLA, these things that you need to survive in any culture. Tell me about that in Japan and your experiences with them.
Oh, God, it's scary. This is probably the most terrifying part. Well, except for their medical system. People might complain, but I think that they have a very excellent social medical system. Very good. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Good to hear.
Yes. It's fairly easy to get a doctor's appointment, unlike here, damn fucking NHS. But it's cheap, and the quality is pretty good. It's pretty much that. It's not a problem. The dentists, now people have told me that the dentists are not too good in Japan. This might be true. I think, okay, this is a stereotype, but Japanese people, their teeth aren't up to the same, I guess, quality as we're used to.
English people have the stereotype about that as well.
I thought your teeth were fine, actually, when I got here. I didn't think that at all when I came, actually.
It's improved a lot, but I think a lot of people know that it's been a common comical stereotype that people have bad breath and bad teeth.
I think so, too. Because now I notice everyone's got, everyone's got braces on. I'm like, yeah. Because in the States, man, we take our smiles seriously.
Yeah, you do.
We are really
do.
obsessed with smiles. Whereas in Japan, silver caps, silver teeth are totally normal. You still just see them. I'm like, whoa. It's like a mouthful.
Really?
Yes, a mouthful of silver on people. You're like, wow. And so I had a fear, actually, because I had a cavity, and I was like, I don't want middle fillings. I don't want middle fillings. I don't want middle fillings. But I had to go get, a filling, but they luckily did it. They did it with plastic, which was good. But apparently they didn't do such a good job because when I came actually to the UK to do my dentist appointment here, they were saying, wow, you really needed like a proper cleaning. Because apparently, like in Japan, it just, wasn't up to par to what the standard is, like here.
All right, so how was the banking system? Obviously you got to get a bank account. I know that's tied into another subject I'm kind of sidestepping here, but, tell us your experiences with setting up a bank in Japan and what you think about that.
Well, if you have a job, they should be able to walk you through this and, in fact, even help you do it directly. If they don't do this, then do not take this jump. What you need, essentially, is, you need your visa and shit like that. And you usually get what's called a hanko. A hanko is a little stamp. And it's usually got your last name written in katakana. At least mine did. And you use this as your signature, essentially, because Japanese people don't really sign. They hanko everything. Mm-hmm. They stamp it.
I've seen that. I've seen that, yeah.
So you get your hanko in order to open up your bank account, and it's fairly simple. It's exactly the same. It's really hard to get a credit card in Japan, though, if you're not Japanese. So hopefully you already have one. But on top of that, but also don't worry about that too much because cash is king in Japan. Everything is cash. Everything is cash.
So?
Oh my God. The one issue you'll have is that ATMs are not 24 hours. They close between 8 and 10 p.m. And sometimes they don't work on holidays. And then you have no money. And it's really shit for if you didn't take out enough money. On that note, though, the ATMs usually don't have limits on them. So just freaking empty that crap out. Sometimes you'll just be like, well, I'm just taking out, about 300,000 yen, which is about maybe 2,400 pounds or something like that. So you just take it all out. You're like, well, you just go to a 7-Eleven. The thing that everybody goes to is 7-Eleven. 7-Eleven is it will save you from everything. 7-Eleven is your bathroom, your dinner, your lunch, your milk, whatever you need, and your ATM.
Your bathroom.
Yeah. Well, okay, let's just say that sometimes if you go to certain Japanese toilets, like the old school ones, you have to squat. It's not nice. But apparently you can also buy your textbooks. This is what students have told me at the 7-Eleven.
Okay.
You can also it's a post office.
Here's an obvious question I'm going to ask right now. Is Japan expensive? Is it an expensive place to live in general?
It's I live in Brighton. You live in London, so London is crazy expensive. I lived how could I say this? I lived in Tokyo. I lived in a tiny apartment. There's no way more than one person could have lived there. But I had a little baby balcony, and I fit in one single bed, one coffee table, one chair. I had one stove. I had a microwave that also doubled up as an oven and a toaster, and I had a shower and a bathtub and a toilet. That was my entire apartment. There was nothing else that you could have there. That was my flat. No space for anything else. I would say, actually, it wasn't that expensive. It probably would have been 400 pounds a month. That was in Tokyo. That was 15 minutes from Ikebukuro Station, which is a very large station in Tokyo. And I was very direct to the train, and I think I used to pay 30 pounds for electricity and 40 for gas. And then 20 or 30 for internet. And then I paid my phone, which, and that was it. Yeah, you could live. It's possible. If you want extra money, which if you live in Tokyo, you do, you start teaching English lessons extra on the side. That's actually how I met. that is how I met one of my boyfriends.
Yeah. Okay, no, that's cool, man. Let's see here. Now we're going to be sweeping up the dregs to see what else. Oh, there's quite a few things I haven't brought up. One of them I've brought up on every single podcast. I'm trying to avoid, but you've brought up something really funny about it. I didn't want to get into this because everyone talks about this one topic about Japan to death. But hey, man, let me ask you. Let me put a phrase to you. Mm-hmm. Hey, CAFFINEJedi, I heard Japan is the most healthiest place to eat on the planet Earth.
God fucking no. I never got so fat.
Why is that? What are you talking about? They eat rice all the time. Rice. Rice
is very filled with calories, but not on top of that. They love fried food. Oh, they love everything fried. Everything.
Really?
Yes. It look like karage. They love to fry everything. Everything's tempura. Tempura, everything. And also, they still, unlike, we still like try to get lean meat. They like fattier meat. Fattier meat is considered like the better meat to get. So they eat lots of meat.
They're so slim. They're such a slim nation.
Because they have magic metabolisms, I swear. I don't know what it is. I can't explain. And they also love mayonnaise. Mayonnaise on everything.
Really? Mayonnaise?
Yeah. There's mayonnaise on everything. Let me think. Like, two of the very meat-heavy dishes that they do is shabu shabu, which is kind of like a fondue. Oh, and it's amazing. It's so good. Shabu shabu, and then there's also yakiniku, which is actually a Korean barbecue, but they made it their own, and it's basically nothing but meat. Yakiniku is literally just roasted meat. And that is also amazing and delicious, and they like curry, and curry is also very high in calories. We know that,
Yeah.
They like curry, and yeah, it's just like it's delicious. I would say the bigger problem is the food is so delicious you want to eat it a lot.
Well, that was my next point. You've lived in like the lower parts and the mid, the city, Tokyo. In general, would you just say, you had a good experience with the food taste-wise, not health-wise?
Oh my God, yes. I love
all around.
Good.
It's good quality of food, though.
Good quality of food. Food was very good. Very delicious food. Very good customer service.
And on the cheap, even if you don't have a lot of money, you can still,
Yeah, like, I used to go to, like I was talking to you about my favorite ramen shop. You get a giant, like, a huge bowl of ramen, and it's got, like, the ramen noodles, the soup, the meat, the chopped up vegetables, and you would get that for, like, 500 yen, which is, like, like £3.50 maybe.
Yeah.
And that,
wow.
And, you get that, and it's, like, a good, like, hearty meal. And, in the winter, oh my God, that would save you. And so you get that. Yeah. You could eat for cheap. This is no joke. I ate for less than 10 quid each day because I would save my money to blow on the weekends.
Wow. That's good to hear, man. And just out of curiosity, you must have had a time where you tried the Japanese attempt at some Western dishes. How did that go down?
Well, it depends. They make good Italian food.
Oh, that's surprising.
Yeah, good Italian food. I've been to good French restaurants. There was actually there was actually an American bar in the town I first lived in, where I was talking about Gekkoji Station and stuff. There's a quite a famous pub there called Michael's, and it's owned by an American. And the food there is immense, very very much true American food, like very good burgers, very good everything. Yeah, so actually their take on Western food is pretty good, except for pizza. Pizza's awful. Yeah, and very expensive.
Okay, and how about the alcohol?
Plentiful. Plentiful, not too expensive, actually. You could get it pretty much anywhere. You could get it in, like, vending machines. It's okay to be drunk in public. Well, I live in Brighton, so I'm used to it. Now I'm like, public drunkenness, it's like every day.
England, come on now.
Yeah, but in the States, it's not so acceptable, actually. It's like...
I heard.
Yeah, the cops just love arresting people in the States. Whereas in Japan, people just like... Well, the thing is, the subway in Japan, the trains, they stop at midnight. So after midnight, you are stuck. You are stuck out there. Wherever you are, enjoy it, because you are going to be wandering the entire night wasted.
Well, we got that in common. England's the same, for the most part.
Yeah, but I think you could get in probably another 2 hours. Like, I think I left the spill party at, like, quite late, and I made it home.
Yeah, all right, 1 o'clock. 1:30 is like the last train in England, but...
Yeah, but in Tokyo, yeah, you're basically, like, out. They have, like, cool places, like, you can go to, like, internet cafes, which are, like, 24-hour, and they're really cheap, and essentially you rent, like, a little booth, and you just hang out in the booth with, like, a TV, and they have, like, free drinks, so you just nap there for a couple hours. It's quite nice. I've done that before. I've just wandered gone, club hopping. You just wandered the streets. You just make friends with random Japanese people who will just Japanese people when they're drunk, they're immensely friendly. And they will just hey, sit with us, have a beer, have some sake, hey, even though you don't understand them, they don't understand you. They just find it funny. And you just are laughing and having a good time. And that's just what you do. You just wander around. It's not considered weird to sleep in a park at night. You'll notice the parks are filled with... These are regular people, not homeless people, just sleeping everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Wow. I'm surprised you're confirming that, because you see that in anime as well, and you're just... Obviously, that's something that's not tolerated in London, and I know in the US as well. Not tolerated at all, so... Yeah,
you can't just sleep in the streets. But in Japan, You do. You just find yourself a freaking corner, and you, tuck up your bag against your head, and you're like, well, good night.
All right. Well, on that note, what's your experiences, or what is your awareness regarding crime and the police out there?
Well, I would say, if you're in any country, even your own country, always be smart about things. Japan is not crime free. It is not crime free. It is fairly safe and has a low crime rate, but that's not to say that things don't go wrong. It does. People do get robbed. People, things do go missing. This happens. Like, it's a normal country. Now, my experience with the police, this is varied, and I have to say that being a woman, I have a big advantage. So I'm only talking from a woman's perspective. Now, people say that the Japanese police, they'll like search gaijin, and they like to mess with gaijin. They'll always ask you, "Where's your passport?" just to be like an asshole, just because like they want to mess with you. Now, if a Japanese police officer wants to search your bag, you can check this before I say anything, but this is just what I've heard. You can ask them for a warrant, or you can ask them why. And technically, they have to give you an answer before they do it. And, they'll just assume that you'll say yes. Like, I might say no just for, the principle of the fact. Now, this never happened to me. I'm a girl. I don't have this problem. But I've heard of people, having foreigners that, crimes are committed against them, and the Japanese police will be like, fuck it, it doesn't matter. Now, in my experience, there's a video where I mentioned this. I got hit by a car in Japan, in Tokyo.
Oh.
Yeah, I did.
Oh.
I got my foot run over, and then I got bumped in the butt. It wasn't too bad, but
wow, that's did that happen at the same time?
Actually, the bump in the butt happened first because I was like, "What the hell?" And I go to turn around, and it's a car, and then it runs over my foot.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. That sounded a bit like a cartoon for me. So how the hell? But yeah, that makes sense now.
It just went like boom, and I was like, ah, and I was screaming. Luckily, I just switched to my winter shoes because it just started to get cold, and And my ex-boyfriend at the time, he was a cool, nice guy. So he hops me down to the police station and, we fill out a report. And the police was like, they were really cool about it. Well, they because like I said, crime is low. So when something happens, man, Japanese police are on it. They're like, what? Somebody's out there who just hit somebody? Go! Send out the squad car! 3 police officers on bicycle! You just chase them on foot! It was like the whole freaking precinct. I was like, what the hell is going on? And so, and then I had to go to the hospital and stuff to go get checked out that it wasn't broken. It didn't feel broken. It was just bruised, my foot.
Yeah.
But like I said, I had to go to the, to the emergency room kind of at night. And they were fine. They were friendly. They didn't really speak English in my Japanese. To this day, my Japanese isn't that great, but I know enough to get by. But, they were friendly. Everybody was cool. There was nothing really wrong with me. And then at the end, I had to go back to the police station, their main police station, to fill out a police report. And when I'm there, they said, oh, now that you filled out the police report, they also took a picture of my shoe that had a tire mark across it. And they also had somebody call to confirm my story. The person behind them had also called the police to report that I had gotten hit by a car. So there was confirmation of my story. So they found the guy, and the guy comes in. Remember I said the thing about the apology. The guy comes in. The police come in and tell me, we found the guy. He's here to apologize to you. And I'm like, apologize? I don't want an apology. I just want my medical.
I'm American.
I'm like,
I want to sue you.
No, I want my medical bills paid, and that be the end of it. And he comes in with his wife, a baby. And a boy who looks maybe he's 2 and is sleeping. It's about midnight at this point.
How could you do that to him?
It was just
terrible.
He comes to apologize with his whole family. I'm like, oh my God, it's fine. I forgive you. Get out of my sight, please. I don't want to deal with this. This is just embarrassing for me.
I can't get money out of this family. I'm playing. No. That's cool, man. Sounds like they're on it. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know what to say. I don't hear a lot of crime stuff about Japan anyway, so. No,
I mean, you'll get okay, so they say the thing about the gropers on the train and da-da-da-da-da. In terms of perverts, let's talk about the pervert story.
Oh, yeah, please. I forgot to touch on it. Go ahead.
All right. My actual first day in Japan, the actual first day I was there, somebody did try to grab my boob. She tried to grab my breasts. Yeah.
Not even your ass. He went straight for the front.
Yeah. That being said,
I thought you said they were shy.
This guy was actually mentally having issues. He actually was not there. This is not an average Japanese man, as I found out later. He's like, he was known about around the town as being kind of like a nut job. And they're like, yeah, you just kind of have to stay away from him. He's a little bit nutty. That being said, when you meet someone who's kind of crazy and a little bit like this, you could probably intimidate them a lot easier. Because later on, I didn't see that guy. Even though I saw him that one time, I didn't see him for an entire year. Later on, I saw him because I remember his yellow bicycle. And I saw him and he saw me. And I think he was watching me. And I just looked at him and I gave him like a really, really mean look and very direct. And I had my keys in my hand. Like, I'm like, go ahead, buddy. I'm going to stab these keys right in your freaking throat.
You had a little Wolverine going on.
Yeah, I did. I was like, ugh. You know, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to throw down. I'm going to throw that stupid bike right off that river, you know? It was just like I was ready to go.
So, yeah, is the gropers thing then? Is that any truth to that apart from in general?
Okay.
Because, you know, the Japanese boys have got to, you're going to get on the train with the men, it's going to be crowded, and then next thing you know, you're going to feel a hand.
Let me see. Let me think if this has ever actually happened to me.
I mean, it might not happen to you, but I mean,
no. It happens. Okay, like I'm sure it's happened to me like once, but like it's also happened to me like in London. It's also happened to me like in like Miami. You know, like sometimes it's crowded, somebody's gonna grab your butt, and you're like, "What the hell?" You know, you try like or like in a nightclub or something like that. You know, it's just like. It's kind of like a sad fact of life of just kind of being a woman. Sometimes it's happening. I'm like, you should never tolerate it. And if you catch the person, you fucking like beat the shit out of them or make a big scene, whatever. You know, you got to teach people lessons.
So there was nothing that made Japan any more special than the other countries.
No.
What you're saying.
I didn't think it was anything like worse. I mean, like the same thing. Like occasionally you'll meet a crazy person on the train. Well, I've also occasionally met a crazy person on the train here. You know,
of course.
The rambling person, like, I'm like, oh god, all right, cool. I'm just gonna not stand here now.
That's another stereotype. That's not true, I guess.
You do get stared at a bit. Like some people also say that they won't sit next to you on the train. Like Japanese people don't sit next to gaijin on the train. That is absolutely not true if you're a woman, as far as I know. This is a woman's perspective, so I could tell you this is actually what has happened. Yes, some women don't like to get on the trains with like, you know, men they don't know. It's just, you know, there had been issues in the 90s. I think in the 90s they had, but now they have like CCTV, I think, everywhere, so they don't really tolerate it anymore. But there was like, whenever a woman would get on the train and there was like an open seat next to me and an open seat next to a Japanese man, 99% of the time they would jump to the seat next to me. They were like, I'm not going to do anything.
Well, the beautiful, nice Caucasian woman, why not sit next to? I mean, come on now. Of course.
So yeah, I mean, things were, yeah. I mean, it's nothing like, yeah, you'll meet your weirdos, you'll meet your pervs, you'll meet like little kids doing that little kid thing where they're like, boobies, you know, but like.
Funny. All right, well, I've got to ask you a question that's coming a bit from the left, but we actually got this in the email because our first two guests that went to Japan never got to answer this question, but you actually mentioned this on a YouTube video. Now, you don't need to go into any detail, but obviously I'm interested myself. Did you say that you actually had the experience with a love hotel in Japan?
Oh, a couple of them. Quite a few.
Man, what's the deal with them? Are they... Because
right.
Obviously that's another thing in the anime that you... Or hentai you might hear about as well. So what's the deal with love hotels in Japan?
Okay, here's the deal with love hotels. Now, in Japan, unlike here and probably most places, when you rent a room in a hotel, they charge you by the person, not by the room. So, yeah, so you always get charged by the room, except for love hotels. The only one they charge you by the room. Now, love hotels, it sounds gross because you could pay by the hour. You're like, oh, yeah, pay by the hour. Yeah, that sounds like you're going to go with a bunch of prostitutes. Now, remember how I said you'd sometimes get the trains get fucking stopped and you're out there in the middle of nowhere and you're like, holy shit, where the hell am I? Well, sometimes love hotels are to the rescue, is all I could say. They're usually very clean. I have never been to one that was gritty. They've always been... Apparently there's themed ones. That's what I was told. I never went to a themed one. Like, themed, as in, like, S&M themed and stuff like that. I'm like, no, but you go to them. They're very clean. They have, like, really big beds. You could order food. They're really nice, actually. They're really nice. I don't know why people... Don't be scared of the love hotels. They're nice, and they're clean, and they have good TV, and usually big TV... And of course,
so what exactly makes some love hotel as opposed to a normal hotel then?
A love hotel is all about being anonymous. The way you get your key is usually either from a person who can't see you or like, you know, they literally have a curtain in front of them. They can't see you. Or you actually get it from a vending machine. You like choose your room, you pay up front, and then you're like, your door opens and you're like just there for the night. Yeah, and
Okay,
then
wow.
and then you can order food and stuff. Like they'll have like a menu, and then you call them, and then you order it, and they'll deliver it, but they'll just leave it there. It's like always like it's about never seeing the hotel staff. Everyone's like ghosts. It's about like being alone and nobody bothering you. So the thing is that young Japanese, especially young Japanese women, they usually tend to live at home until they get married. And Japanese men, they sometimes live in like work dormitories. So they, the only way that you're gonna bang is you're gonna go to a love hotel.
Wow, that's very enlightening. I had no idea, especially about how the process is. That's cool. I mean, surprised that practice isn't used in other countries, really.
I swear I wish we had them. I mean, the thing is like the concept sounds so smutty. Like, ooh, love hotels. That's where you take your hookers to, right? It sounds like hookery. But in reality, lots of normal people use them. And I used them too because I was like, well, we're stuck out here. Let's just go to a love hotel. And sometimes you do like multiple people because you're like, they're never going to know because it's so quiet. Like, you're like, all right, us and 4 friends. Okay, you guys take the sofa. I'll take, us 3 like crawl into the giant bed.
I think the only loophole I can see with that is, shouldn't there be like an age restriction on that? And isn't that kind of dangerous?
That is a problem, and it's actually there's things that they've gotten in trouble for that. Where like students, sometimes like 14-year-old like girls in their school uniforms will like stand outside and kind of prostitute themselves, trying to be like, hey, And now I don't know if this is true, but this is a rumor I've been told that if you see a high school girl with like name brand bags and shoes and clothes, it's because she's got like an older guy.
Okay. Well, maybe it's a sign. Maybe, yeah. Well, it's good to know, I guess. All right. Well, we've covered quite a lot on this trip to Japan. I think we're getting to the end of this. Like I said, this isn't going to be a tell-all people. This is just a brief overview. So I think we got just a couple more things to look through. Let me just check my notes here. Now you've covered a lot of the misconceptions. Is there any other major culture shocks that you might have not brought up already that maybe you want to touch on?
I would say, I think when you're, especially like young, like a teenager, I think you sometimes think of Japan, especially from anime, as like a little bit of a fairy tale. Like this magical wonderland that's perfect in every possible way. And I think that it's hard, but I kind of have to burst some people's bubbles that it's really not like that. And this is not to say that it isn't a great country and it doesn't have like amazing things to offer. But you can't like kind of be blinded by the lights, essentially. You shouldn't be. When you see, especially when you know Japanese people, and you have friends that are Japanese, and they sometimes, like, because they're Japanese, they're expected to fit in these certain molds, these certain little boxes. You see, like, they struggle with it. You see the struggle in them for it, and you become sad for them, and you become like, oh my God, I'm sorry. I wish you weren't stuck like this. I wish you didn't have to work in your job all the time, and you're never allowed to change careers because that just doesn't happen. And, it's a little bit hard. It's a little bit hard, and I think that sometimes when you go to Japan as a foreigner, and when I say the Japanese people are closed off and they won't really open up to you, one of the things I should also say is that they'll sometimes open up to you more than they ever will any of their actual friends because they expect you as a foreigner to be understanding of that.
Did that make sense? Like you're a third party, you're separated from, the norm, so maybe they can confine more. That makes sense, yeah. Yeah,
so that is actually... Now... There's another guy in Japan. He's also on YouTube. God, I wish I remember his name. I think his channel is called JFAC. But he mentioned that, because going to psychiatrists is still kind of taboo in Japan, should you have some type of depression issue and stuff like that. Or even, like talking out your problems to a therapist even is like still taboo. Some doctors were even suggesting that people take English lessons in order to just let it out.
Wow, that's weird and interesting. Let me kind of wrap this up and just ask you a couple more questions, and then we'll kind of leave this behind. So, is there anything that you wish you knew beforehand, or before you went to Japan, or any advice you would give to someone that you really think some bullet point things that this is what you really need to, know before you go to survive? Especially if you want to live there, not just visit. Okay,
I would say in terms of things I wish I knew before I got there was it'll be hard to make friends. It'll actually be hard. It is not easy. Just some cold reality. But I also don't regret going cold because it's a slap in the face, but it's a slap in the face I think you need when you're 22. You're like, bam, life. I'm like, oh, crap. You know, but it's good. It's good. It gets you going. In terms of like to survive, if you want to live there long term, learn the language. I was a little bad about that, but you really should. I would have gotten, if I would have stayed, I would have gotten better, but learn the language. Some people are like, should you learn the language before? Not really. You can, but I think that when you get there, you're going to learn like Japanese, like the way Japanese people actually speak, which is not like a textbook. Go there with an open mind. Don't go there just to bang women, for the love of God, or men. You know, I've got to take it from both sides. Don't do that. Don't be a douche, because then you make all the other gaijins seem like assholes, and we hate that. Be respectful of the culture. Be respectful of, like, you know, the social rules. At the same time, do not feel constrained if you feel you're in danger, if you feel like you're in, you know, peril. Fuck the social rules. Seriously. You scream for help as hard and long as you want. You beat the crap out of someone right in the middle of the subway if you think that, you know, they're going to hurt you. That's about it.
And you know what? One thing I didn't ask you is, what's some of the coolest things you did in Japan?
Oh.
Because I know you climbed Mount Fuji, and I didn't mention that. And, you know, I nearly forgot to mention it. You climbed Mount Fuji. How was that, man?
Okay, so there's a proverb in Japanese about this, and it'll basically describe it exactly. A wise man will climb Mount Fuji once in their life. A fool will do it twice.
Nice.
Yeah, so do it once in your life, but you'll never want to do it again. It is an experience. It's like quite grueling. It's much more grueling than I expected. I did it with sneakers on. That's not recommended.
Really? What's the preferred if not sneakers then?
Like hiking shoes, like proper hiking boots.
Okay. And how long did it take you to climb?
I think it took me like 6 hours to the top and 2 hours back down.
Oh, why so short back down?
Because you're going down.
No, okay. Dumb question.
Yeah, because gravity is helping you. That's why. But
and you're running. Were you running? I gotta get out of here.
Oh my God! It was so steep and gravelly, and I just kept falling a bunch of times. And we were doing it in the dark because, like, there's no lights on the mountain or anything. So, like, I'm like tumbling all the way down. I'm like, ah!
You made video. You did make video that I saw. That was pretty cool, man.
Yeah, I was like sunburned. I was like, oh my God, I was bruised all over the place. I couldn't like walk for like 2 days. It was rough. It was cool. It was cool and it was amazing. I think one of my favorite parts was that, like, staring up at the stars, because it's like that, those stars that have like no city lights, no light pollution. So it's pure, like you see the Milky Way kind of like, it's just like amazing. And you see falling stars. I was like, wow, this is amazing. Wow. So that was really cool. Let me think. What other weird adventures?
Was Tokyo cool? Because, you know, people see that movie, the Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift, and the lights and the city. Was Tokyo a really cool city as well?
Damn straight, it was awesome. It's like my favorite city. I'm sorry, I don't like London that much, but I really like Tokyo in terms of like a big city, because there is just something happening and something to do all the time. No matter what your budget is, you'll like figure it out. There's like so much like adventure to be had, and I would say that's the thing about Japan, is that, like, don't limit yourself, because I've known too many people, and this is also something I should tell everybody, who get there and then lock themselves up. Like, they don't want to go out, they don't want to explore because they're scared, because they're shy, because they're, you know, whatever, they'll think they'll get lost. Get yourself a smartphone. Don't cheapen out at this. Get yourself a smartphone with a fucking map. And, you know, set off. Do it. Just find a place. Go on this adventure. You know, go find a temple. Go wander through the freaking forest. Watch out for bears and monkeys, though.
Bears and monkeys. Ugh.
And boar. Wild boar.
We did hear about wild boar from our previous guest. And you know what's so funny? I went through the whole podcast, and I know some of the anime people were pissed off at me because I didn't actually ask a lot about anything anime related. But yeah, I think I did, but we kind of skipped over it. Was there anything from otaku culture that, any misconceptions, or did you get a really big anime vibe out there, manga vibe out when you were out there? Okay,
I would say that I think originally I thought anime culture was only for otaku, and in reality it's like for everyone. You see like old men, old women, young men, teenagers, kids, they all are reading manga on the train. Every one of them. They're like, you know, and different type, and they'll all be reading like, you know, it doesn't matter. Age doesn't matter. Everybody's just like, this one's just for, you know, this is a yaoi for women. And then like, I see like, you know, an old man reading it. Then I'll see like, oh, this one's just for kids. And then, you know, you'll see like, you know, a middle-aged housewife reading it, you know. Just that's the way it works. It's just
a lot of merchandising and stuff like that.
Oh my
You see that
god,
everywhere?
yes, it's crazy. Like, especially Akihabara is, of course, the famous area for that. Akihabara.
Yeah. My last co-host, obviously, last guest, sorry, both confirmed that as well. But I just wanted to ask you and stuff. And but to be honest with you, I really wanted to get more of a perspective on living in the country because my last guest went there to do anime-centric things, but living in the country is different. And I think you've given this audience a really good idea of your experience there, the female perspective, which is always harder to find, and you've been very open and honest about it. And I think my last question is really, do you ever see yourself going back there to live, or just for an extended amount of time? Because obviously, I think you would visit. I think that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I'm going to visit. Truth be told, and this is another part about growing up, kids. Me and my boyfriend, my partner, we just bought a house in Brighton, so it's kind of time. It's time to settle. I think we're settling in here. I don't see myself going to live in Japan long term. I don't know what the future holds. I'll never. I wouldn't say no. Like if the opportunity arose to go, I wouldn't say no. Now that being said, the older you get, when things like children start to pop up in your life, when things like that, which is in our age group, it's it's sooner than later. Actually, it's like it's already happening to everybody around us. I'm like, oh God, every time I look on Facebook, somebody else is having a baby. I'm like, Jesus Christ, stop it. But if you're young, if you're a teenager, if you're in your like early 20s, even if you're like in your 30s and life, you're kind of down with life and you want some adventure, freaking do it. There's no time like the present. Do not hold back. Do not say, maybe I'll do this and this first. If you want to go. Do not set limits for yourself. Like, I think we have a tendency of being like, I can't do it because I can't do it. There's actually nothing holding you back.
No, and I have to say, man, I find your story, and I do call it a story because although we didn't get into certain aspects, more personal aspects of that, you can go into CAFFINEJEDI's YouTube, as I said multiple times now, to get all the juicy details of her actual story in there. But I found your story to be very inspirational, man. And although I know there was a little bit of controversy about you leaving Japan, which I'm not really going to get into, because if you want my perspective on it, it's just life. It wasn't even that big of a deal. But the thing I really liked about watching all your videos, listening to you talk, and even doing this podcast, is that I do feel like a lot of people fantasize Japan as a magical place. And maybe to be honest with you, more guys than even women, because the otaku, the anime culture. Yes, women are so subservient. We can get maids, we can have maid cafes, we can have sex, and Japan, the hot springs, and so many things that we just totally fantasize about in our minds. But the reality is, as you've said, it's a country like any other. It has its ups, it has its downs, it has its problems. And, people should take a lot of things into consideration before they go and move to another country. But, you being a young, single, Caucasian lady going to Japan, if you can do it, I mean, anyone can do it.
You can do it. You can do it. I think everybody, if you really want to do it, there's like lots of avenues to do it. So don't hold yourself back. And it's not even like, I would say this is about Japan, but like you can say that about your entire life. Like just have a sense of adventure.
Yeah, and you've been there, done that, and watching your videos, you're very adventurous. I saw you were doing some rapid boat sliding shit. Like, damn, this girl's crazy. So, who knows? You'll probably be going all over the world. Maybe you'll even be a globetrotter or something. But yeah, man. Is there anything else you want to do before we wrap up the Japan conversation? Because we're going to move on to you coming to the UK and what you're doing now. Is there anything else you want to say before we leave? Because although I think I've squeezed you like a sponge and I've drained everything out of you, is there anything else you want to say before we go on that?
No, I think I've pretty much wrapped it up. Just like I said, like you go to a new place, be respectful, behave yourselves. That's about it.
Yeah, and Japan's cool, man. That's 3 thumbs up, people. Done to our 3 of my guests, all giving Japan a thumbs up. And yeah, man, I appreciate you coming on, sharing your experience with us about Japan. It was very insightful. Again, learned a lot, especially about that ramen place, which I'll be going back into the podcast so I can write that down. So when I go on the
Bunka Ramen. That's what it's called. Bunka Ramen on Gekkoji Station.
All right, CJ, I think we've covered everything we wanted to say about Japan, and I'm glad that we had you on to cover all that. Again, very useful, very informative. And, but some people might have just not wanted to hear all that because they've watched all your videos, and they might be more interested to hearing what you're doing with your upcoming web series. So people, we're just going to take a short interlude, and we'll be right back with what CJ's up to more recently. And we're back. CJ.
Hello.
Hey, thank you, man, for coming on the podcast. I know it's been quite a long one. Again, I appreciate you taking the time out. And, now that we've covered your journey into Japan and how you lived there, oh, you know what? I'll let you take it from here. So after you left Japan, you moved to England.
Well, yeah, that's the short version. I left Japan. I actually went back home to the United States, and where I met my boyfriend, and then I moved to England with my boyfriend.
Okay. And now you're working on a web series, and, I want to hear, well, I don't take as long as you want or as short as you want, but tell me how that came about and, what you're going to do with that, because you were actually studying in England for law, right? So
yeah.
How did that turn into you doing a web series?
Okay, so the way it went down, I do lots of YouTube videos. I very much enjoy doing YouTube videos, and I've been enjoying doing them more as time went on, like to the point where I was like, you know what, I think this is kind of what I want to do. Now, I've always liked writing. I've always enjoyed writing and coming up with stories and stuff, so I thought to myself, maybe I could do something scripted. And at first, it was like a very small idea. I was like, maybe it'll just be, a tiny little story, and it'll just be like played by like me and my boyfriend, just, doing some like scripted stuff. Then as time went on, it was like, well, no, let me come up with like a storyline to it. And then it just like developed into like this very, very large project that it is right now, which is, it's basically done. We're self-funded, which is going to be nightmarish, but, eventually we will e-beg, I guess, when we need to. Which, yeah, it came about just out of boredom and curiosity, and I thought, you know what, I would love to produce something, for online that is, professional, like it could possibly be on TV, and it's exactly like I don't have to deal with larger companies essentially dictating what I can and can't do. It's essentially exactly what I want.
And, I do want to mention you did make a short about poker, which I thought was really funny and really cool. And I'm going to obviously put a link to that in the description as well. And I'm really interested to see where you're going with this, man. So can you tell us a bit more about this web series? The details, or are you going to keep that hush-hush?
No. I could give you some details. So what I could say, this is the stage we're in. We're in the script writing stage. We have hired our DOP. We have put like a deposit on the lights. This thing is happening. This is happening. This is not just me like, well, maybe sometime in the future, perhaps, this is going to be shot in October. We have like set the dates. We have hired actors.
And what's your role in this?
I am actually acting in it. I am actually acting as the main character.
Okay, cool. So you're the co-writer and you're the lead character as well.
Yes. I am writing this with another YouTuber. His name is Ryan O'Carlin. He's also known as like the Bunny Beater. If you go into any of my recent videos, you'll see him. He's like a bearded guy. And yeah, we're writing the script together at this point. And I guess I could tell you a little bit of a synopsis, at least what we have so far. I can't give you away too much. No spoilers, people.
Of course.
It's about a young woman who basically has a bad run with some Miami drug lords. She gets shot off a boat. And she wakes up on Brighton Beach. Now, throughout it, it's a dark comedy, and when I say it's a dark comedy, the dark parts will be very dark. The comedy parts, I hope, will be comical. We're working on it, and like I said, like I like anime, so I want something like in the style of, but it's live action. We are hoping to put some animation in there. If you want to know like the style of like the characters, I did make kind of a painting. If you go on my Facebook, you'll actually see the painting, which I'm giving away. Actually, I already gave it away, sorry, but you can see it. You can see with a picture of it. Anyway, so throughout the story, it's her it's like her past coming back to haunt her, and like she's trying to make new friends in England. In the meantime, like there's assassins sent to kill her, and these assassins like have like strange haphazard things happen to them because of a rather peculiar curse, I guess she has. It's either a curse or it's could be a superpower, or it could just be a coincidence. It's got a lot of magical realism in it, I guess you could say.
I know this might be a big give, but do you have a working title?
I originally had it as Swimming with Sharks, but the problem with Swimming with Sharks is that there's a movie called Swimming with Sharks, which is with Kevin Spacey in it. So I'm actually trying to find a new title at the moment. But if you search Shark Helping Fish, which is my website, which eventually I guess we'll do something with it. I might even call it Shark Helping Fish. I haven't decided because there's like a lot of water theme in the web series. But it's essentially going to be 9 episodes long. Each episode will be about 20 to 30 minutes. Depending how much time and effort we put into it. And yeah, it should be an exciting thing to do. I've hired like a fight choreographer. I want this thing done right. I want it to be exciting and fun.
Fight choreographer. Are you going to be taking some defense classes to learn some new moves and stuff?
Actually, my fight choreographer said don't do that. Like it's better.
Really?
Yeah, it says it's better you know nothing. Because then you think you know something and you might really hurt someone. So.
Okay. See, your people, we're learning some tips of the trade. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, the character I play is well, not to stereotype an American, but she's obsessed with guns.
Okay. So, how long do you see this taking to produce? Or you're not really sure about it right now?
If we're filming in October, I'm not sure how long post will be. We are going to release, I would say, between March and the summer. I have no idea. I really have never done anything to this scale before. But my hope is that it doesn't suck, that it's actually good, that people like it and watch it and are interested. Because if people like it, we are planning a second season already. We're actually already in the midst of like planning our second season. And yeah, we are releasing 3 shorts. We are shooting 3 like shorts that are like somewhat prequels to the web series, and we're shooting those in I think either August or September. And so people get an idea of the humor and what kind of thing we're going for.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, man, that's pretty cool. And it's going to give you a chance to actually get more into the industry, learn some tricks of the trade, regarding production, special effects and stuff like that. So, I mean, to break into the industry, I think it's a good learning curve. I
think in that sense, I've been very lucky in terms of that, because I know some people like really have to like claw their way into like getting their ideas out there, and I kind of just am like, I'm gonna do it, jump into it, go, But I really want something that like speaks to like the average like internet goer. Basically, I'm doing it for an internet audience, which is a different audience from a TV audience. It's like the style of TV in terms of like the way it's set up, but I want it like to speak to an internet audience, to speak to, people who like are online a lot and understand that kind of culture. But I think that, yeah, I'm just, really, really looking forward to it. It's just going to be something really cool to do and fun. And I hope it doesn't suck. And I think it'll be actually a good, awesome time. Not to toot my own horn, but I am pretty cool.
Well, saying that, are you thinking about releasing this on YouTube or going a different route for release?
Okay, so I will probably release the prequel shorts on YouTube, yes. My reason for hesitating to go on YouTube, even though YouTube wants to move in this route, they really do want to go like almost the Netflix type of route, is that the average person who goes on YouTube does not go for like longer content. It just isn't usually how it works. It's an episode, so the episode is like the size of an episode, 22, 25, 27 minutes. I'm not sure how well that will work on YouTube. I haven't decided yet. That's all I can say. When it's out there, I'm going to like, tell everybody where it can be found and how.
No, I get that. Yeah, I know a lot of, some of the most popular bloggers are not on YouTube. Like that guy with the glasses, he's, Doug Walker, he's on his own website.
Yeah.
And I mean, when it's popular, people end up posting your stuff on YouTube anyway. without your permission. So.
I mean, this is definitely true. This is I would say like my inspiration comes from Dr. Horrible. Dr. Horrible, I would say, is one of the most successful like web content based series. You know.
Love that show, man.
Everybody loves it. It's so good.
When's the second season coming? It's been how many years?
I know. It's because he's saying, Joss Whedon says he's working on the Avengers too.
Oh, yeah.
So, but I really liked Dr. Horrible, and like, I want something, I don't know if our production quality will be that good because Dr. Horrible cost $200,000 to make, and I have,
Really?
Yep. And I only have like about a fourth of that budget. So, and I'm doing a lot more content, so we'll see how we go. But, you know, here's hoping, here's fingers crossed and stuff. But I would hope to do something to like a similar caliber. I probably can't because I don't have the music. But I want to be something cool, something interesting, something that I think that's the standard of online production, something to that effect.
Oh, yeah, man. I mean, the thing about the internet and YouTube and people doing for themselves, we're just getting so much entertainment, and so many people just bringing themselves up now, and some really good content, man, that are just coming from independent people. So I'm looking forward to seeing, you know, the fruits of your labor, and from just seeing your videos about your social commentaries, your trips to Japan, and even, like I said, the poker short you made. I like your sense of humor. I like your style. So, you know, I'll definitely be checking that out, and I'll be promoting that as well, man.
Yeah, well, once I actually have probably more to say on it, I think it would be cool if I could ever come back and like we could do something else about it.
Oh yeah, most definitely, man. Most definitely. All right, man. So I guess that's pretty much it, man. I really want to thank you for coming on the podcast, man. It was great working with you. I'm a fan of your videos in general anyway, and it was fantastic to get your perspective on Japan, the female perspective, which was, you know, I had two guys on. I'm so glad I had the opportunity to have a female on as well. So, and you lived there, so that was great as well. And I'm looking forward to your web series and all your future endeavors.
Yeah, well, me too. And I'm hoping to, you know, for people to check it out, and I'll let people know as, you know, things pop up. So.
Well, I mean, all the links to CAFFINEJedi will be in the description, her YouTube page, Twitter, everything else. And if her web series comes out and the podcast is still around, I will definitely put the link in the description. But, you know, like you said, if we get a chance to do this again, if you're not too busy with your movie making, you know, making your millions when you left all of us behind and, you know, you just hit the big time, if you still got the time, I would be more than happy to have you back on the podcast.
Yeah, I would love to. Definitely.
All right, then. Well, people, if you want to ask CAFFINEJedi a question, I'll send a link to her Twitter in the description. If you want to email us, the email is planettyro@gmail.com. Again, I want to thank CAFFINEJedi for being on this episode. I want to thank you subscribers on her YouTube channel, on our page. Listen, subscribe to CAFFINEJedi, especially if you want to know about Japan, because she has so much more to say, so much more good stuff than I covered. I basically just scratched the surface. So, you know, she lived there for 3 years and she had so much more to say. But on top of that, she's just a really cool person. I met her, in the flesh. We met at the spill party, and hopefully we get to meet again, work together again, and, you know, going on and on and on. So that's about it, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for being on this episode, Jedi.
Yeah, no problem.
And by the way, where did that name CAFFINEJedi come from anyway?
It was a stupid guy I was dating, didn't know how to spell caffeine. I'm also a big Star Wars fan.